it's Elizabeth from Psychology for Geeks. And today I'm really excited for this video because I am joined by Sherri, and she is an amazing person, but we collaborated before and she has an area of expertise that I don't really have. So I wanted to collaborate with her to make this video because we'll be talking about therapy dogs, emotional support animals, and service animals, and a bunch of like all that stuff, like all the information that you may need if you're interested in doing that with your dog or with your pet or in that type of therapy. We'll talk about it all in this video. So I hope you guys enjoy.
So she's hoping for some snacks. That's her payment for showing up. Yeah.
On my website, I have a picture of my dog as well. And I wrote in there that he's willing to do anything as long as he gets snacks, because he used to like model for me, I guess. So I put pictures of him.
What's your dog's name?
His name is Canelo.
Okay, nice.
So, okay.
Yeah,
well,
Sunny is 2.5, and this is her favorite snack. So she will be glued by my side as long as I have it.
Oh, okay. There you go. Perfect. So since we have Sunny here, can you tell us a little bit about how do you greet a dog? Before that, how long have you had Sunny for?
So I have had Sunny for a little over 2 years. I adopted her in December 2019. She was 3 or 4 months old at the time, not for sure because she's a rescue. But yeah, we've been best friends ever since. And it just happened to be good timing with the pandemic coming up and everything, but we didn't know that at the time. So
was she your first pet?
No, she's not my first pet. I've had a guinea pig, I've had newts, I've had fish, and many cats over the years. I have a cat now, actually. She's 15. Her name is Matilda. Yeah. Any
chance we can see her?
Yeah, for sure. She's asleep, but she's right here.
Oh, she's hiding from us. So I've always wanted a cat, but I'm not sure how Canelo will react to having a cat. He's getting used to our puppy, Blaze, but he's still kind of like a grumpy old man. He's like, don't touch me. I don't want to play with you right now.
Yeah, they're very different from dogs, for sure.
So talking about dogs, can you tell us a little bit about how, I guess give us some tips on how we can learn to greet dogs when
so the first thing I would say is to always make sure that you ask the dog's human if you can say hello before you do. A lot of people don't think to ask first, and the dog could be in training and not allowed to say hi, or it might not be friendly. Even if it looks friendly, it might be scared. And then you can ask them then, if they say yes, how the dog likes to be greeted. I think what we usually think is correct is to lean forward and put our hand down for them to smell, and that's actually not the best way to greet a dog. So what you want to do is you want to turn kind of sideways and not stare at them, and that helps them to feel less threatened and to be able to approach you on their terms, and then you can pet them. And usually what the best thing to do is like under their chin or on their shoulder or their back, not on the top of their head. They really don't like that in most cases.
Oh, I did not know that. And I think that's kind of like the typical advice that you usually get from people, right? Like, oh, just approach slowly and like let them sniff your hand for a little bit and then you can touch them.
Yeah, and I think the problem with that is that it's just so confrontational, because we're usually like staring at them, right, when we do that, and dogs find that very threatening.
Yeah, it's probably not the best approach then. She's so cute, I can't get over it. She's just there like snacking. So I know we collaborated, and I can't take any of the credit for this, but you wrote a couple of blogs that have information, like this type of information that we're talking. Not everybody likes to read. I do. I love doing that, but not everybody does. So that's why I wanted to create this video with you as well. So can you tell us a little bit about, I think there's a lot of sort of misinformation out there about what an emotional support animal is versus a therapy dog versus a service dog. There's a lot of sort of arguments online that happen sometimes too, where people think or confuse therapy dogs with emotional support animals and things like that. So can you give us a little bit about like more information about how we are able to distinguish those dogs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a confusing topic. I actually just shared that blog post with someone yesterday because they were asking about how much it would cost to get their friend a therapy dog for individual. And I was like, well, I don't think you're talking about a therapy dog. So at a high level, a service dog is task trained to help one person with a disability. And so a service animal is usually a dog. It can be a miniature horse, but they don't have all of the access rights that dogs have. So it's a little different. But a service dog, they only have access rights actually when they're with their person who has the disability, because it's the person that has the access right, not the dog. So if someone has a disability and they have an animal that's trained to perform a task to help them, whether it's maybe a guide dog or whether it's sometimes people living with PTSD have a service dog trained to go in and check the room for them before they go in, things like that. There are people I have a friend who had a service dog who would alert her when her blood sugar was low because she has type 1 diabetes. And so they're really great animals and they have so many important jobs, but it can be a lot to go through that training process. So and then with emotional support animals, they also are for one person. They actually are prescribed. It has to be by someone who is a medical professional. It doesn't have to be a mental health professional. All of the online registries are a scam. Those are, yeah, they're all a scam. You should be working with a medical provider that you're already working with in order to get that letter. So I know in California, there's a new law that went into place that a mental health provider has to be working with a client for 30 days before they're able to write them a letter for an emotional support animal. If you are a mental health professional that wants to be offering these services, I took a course from Rebecca Stone actually on emotional support animals, and she had us talk to our ethics board and our licensing board, the housing department, so many different to find out specifically what are the laws in our local area and how that informs our emotional support animal policies and letters that we write. So that was really interesting. But an emotional support animal is also for someone with a disability, but they are not task trained. They provide comfort just through being there, basically. So the difference there is something called a psychiatric service dog, and it's a little different from an emotional support animal in that usually they're task trained to prevent or alert ahead of maybe a panic attack or a PTSD episode, something like that. Whereas an emotional support animal just provides comfort by being there and in the moment. So they can alleviate our anxiety, our depression, etc., but they don't actually help to prevent it as much from a task training perspective. And they don't have the public access rights that support animals have. So they can only, in California, they have 2 access rights, and that's through the housing department, weight restrictions, or and they're not allowed to charge you pet rent either. But the other one in California is actually that they're allowed to go to work with you. Emotional
I didn't know
support
that
animals.
one. I thought it was because I did look into that. My dog kind of he's emotional support animal for me. And I was really confused when I was like looking at information and stuff for it, because it, like you said, there's so many like registers out there, and then they promise you all kinds of things, and they give you all kinds of goodies as well. But it was really hard to like try to figure out, what was actually correct. And then I was searching to figure out like, well, okay, so what are the rights that he has, or that, where can I go with him? Because in some places they said, oh, well, if you are at a hotel, then you can stay, like he can your emotional support animal can stay with you. And then I will go, and then they're like, no, we don't do that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on anymore. But it's really important too, as mental health professionals, for us to understand what the laws are, especially like in our state. Because when I was a practicum student, I had a couple of people like talk to me about like writing those letters, and most of the time it was just because they didn't want to be charged for having a pet and when in the place they were renting. And then so we kind of had to explain that. And like every place that I worked at had like a different policy. Sometimes we were allowed to write the letters, sometimes we weren't.
Yeah, it's interesting. It definitely varies by state. So in California, it varies by state, but in California, emotional support animals, their only rights. I feel like housing should include hotels, but it doesn't.
Right? It will make life so much easier. And then, because I love going places with him. We love going to the dog beaches together. That's about a 2-hour drive for us, and he always has a blast and I have a blast. But if I want to stay somewhere overnight, sometimes it's a little difficult to find a place that allows dogs and whatnot. Okay, so we learned a little bit about service dogs and emotional support animals. What about therapy dogs?
So therapy dogs are different. They are actually to help other people rather than their owner. It doesn't mean they can't help their owner, but that's a big difference between support animals and service animals, emotional support animals, and therapy animals, is that emotional support animals and service animals are to help one person, and therapy animals are to help many people. So there's basically two different types of therapy animals. There's animal assisted therapy, and then there's animal assisted activities. So animal assisted activities are more so the volunteer therapy organizations that you'll see, like Pet Partners, Alliance of Therapy Dogs, Therapy Dogs International, Love on a Leash, and I think Bright and Beautiful maybe is the other one. There's like 5 that are nationally recognized by the AKC. And in those cases, the therapy animal doesn't have a specific goal. They're not assigned to a treatment plan. There's no progress notes. It's just that you take them into a place and help provide comfort to others. So that could be visiting people at an assisted living facility or at the hospital, or maybe being part of a reading program, things of that nature. Then there's also animal assisted therapy, and that's when they're actually tied into a treatment plan and goals. And so in that case, it's not always mental health professionals. So they can be used for occupational therapy. They can be used in animal assisted education, where they're actually helping someone with social emotional learning, or through like reading education. So sometimes actually those read to a dog programs are technically really more like animal assisted therapy through animal assisted education. Like they have goals in place and everything that they're working on. So yeah, there's a variety of different ways that therapy dogs can help other people. They do not have any public access rights. So if they have permission from the facility to be there that day with their person, then they're allowed to be there. But they are not allowed to impersonate a service dog. It doesn't give them right to live in pet-free housing like an emotional support animal would. It only gives them the right to be in those volunteer spaces that they have an existing agreement with.
That's really interesting to know. There's so many like different ways that you can, I guess, that you can have a pet around for emotional support, for therapy, for tons of different things. I've kind of seen some videos like on TikTok about some service dogs, or like the training that goes into it. I think ever since I had my dog, because technically Canelo is like my first pet as an adult and one that I can remember. I think my mom would tell me that we had a cat when we were little, but like that was so long ago. I'm like, I don't even remember. But like he's my first pet, and like I got really interested in learning all about this, which is why I reached out to you, because I think it's very important for us to know. Oh, look, he wants more snacks.
She's very classy.
The whole time you were talking, I'm like, oh yes, very interesting. But look at Sunny, he's so cute. Okay, back on topic. So yeah, I think it's very important for us to know all of these distinctions and like all the possibilities, right? Like
yeah,
I have a niece who she struggles with social anxiety, and I think one of her mental health providers suggested a dog, and she's doing really well now, like with her little doggy. And I thought about tons of times about training my dog Canelo to be a therapy dog, but I am kind of lazy to keep up the training, and I don't know, he's just like, I just see him like a grumpy old man, and he does what he wants whenever he wants, and I let him. So I don't think it will work out well. But if there is someone who's highly interested in that, do you have any recommendations or any information that it might be helpful for them?
Yeah, I think it's really important that you identify that he wouldn't really enjoy being a therapy dog. A lot of dogs can be therapy dogs, but it's not for everyone. It's important that the dog wants to meet friendly strangers, that they're okay in a variety of situations. I think the type of work you want to do really makes a difference on whether or not the dog is appropriate, or you could say what the dog's level of interest is and comfort is dictates where you can volunteer, get involved. For example, there are therapy dogs at airports. That's a lot of stimulation. I don't think Sunny would enjoy that because there's sensory overload at airports, right? You have smells, you have people, you have sounds, you have everything going on. Her airport after that, but it's a different experience than what my goal is, which is for her to work together with me in private practice one day. And so that's a very less stressful environment, I would say, for a therapy dog, depending on the type of clients that you have. I did take a training from someone in, I think, Florida on animal assisted play therapy. And she was talking about how she has multiple dogs, and she lives she works close to home. And so she can call up her husband and be like, hey, can we switch out the dogs? Which is really convenient. But what she's found is that the dogs can't handle very many sessions that involve like childhood sexual abuse, for example, in a row. And it's not that they understand what's being said, it's that they can feel those emotions, and it just really drains them. So it definitely depends on the dog. I think the biggest thing to think about is, what are you interested, where are your dog's interests, where do they feel comfortable, what are your interests, where do you feel comfortable, I created a guide on this. Actually, you can find it at freeguide.therapydogtalk.com. And it'll help you kind of walk through thinking about the different things that you might need to take into consideration when you're deciding where you want to volunteer with your dog. And I think that that's an important first step before you really start talking to organizations. Because what you'll find is that if there's a specific program that you're interested in volunteering with, there's a good chance that they work with a specific organization. And so that will impact which of those therapy dog organizations you end up going through. And then once you make that decision, you can figure out what the testing is going to look like. So they're all pretty upfront with that information on their websites about what the testing is, what the fees are, things of that nature. And so what generally is recommended is that if you're interested in your dog becoming a therapy dog, to work on training them for the AKC Canine Good Citizen title, CGC it's usually called. For short, and that is very similar to the therapy dog tests. So if they can pass that title, they might have a little bit more work to do, but for the most part, that'll really prepare them well for those tests. And in the end, if it turns out that your dog doesn't want to be a therapy dog, or you decide it's not for you, that's totally fine. You still have a well-trained dog, so you didn't lose anything.
Win-win situation, right?
Exactly. It can't help to train towards therapy dog, because even if you decide that it's not the right path, you still have a better trained dog.
So I'm curious, well, I've been watching some of your videos that you post on Instagram for Sunny and like her training and everything. And I was just curious to know, like, well, I guess we talked a little bit about this before, but where is she at in the training process right now?
Yeah, so Sunny got her Canine Good Citizen title last summer, actually summer 2021. It was a very long process for us. Her trainer always laughs about how everything is on Sunny's time. And so we accomplished that, and we've been working towards therapy dog work since then. My goal is for us
Oh, so cute.
my goal is for us to be in this summer's cohort of the Animal Assisted Counseling Academy at Texas State. I am still waiting to hear back if we're accepted for that, but if we are, then I will have online training in May. And then we will go to Texas for a few days in July and a few days in August. And the person, Dr. Hartwig, who runs that program, she actually is a licensed supervisor for play therapy, for school counseling, and for marriage and family therapy. And so the curriculum involves learning different interventions for really each of those areas, depending on what you're interested in. So the program is only for mental health professionals, and you have to have a therapy animal going into it, but they just have to have their Canine Good Citizen to be a part of the program. They don't have to have any other certification yet at that point, because they work with you on that. So that's where we are, is working towards that.
So let's say in about a year, when everything is complete, what will be Sunny's job in the therapy session?
Yeah,
and also your job.
So it really depends on who you talk to. It's interesting. I saw a LinkedIn post the other day where someone was saying why they don't use the term therapy dog, and why they focus on the term animal assisted interventions. And in their opinion, the dog actually isn't doing therapy, you are. However, the CADRA model by Jonathan something, I'm blanking on his last name, but I took a training from him. That model, and also what Dr. Hartwig does, in those models, the animal is considered a co-therapist. And so really, I believe the Animal Assisted Counseling Academy, you learn interventions specifically involving the dog. But in general, your treatment goals are going to be the same for your client, whether or not you're using an animal partner. Your treatment goals are the same, and also your billing codes are the same. Those don't actually differ. What differs is that you're making the dog an intervention or part of the treatment plan, but not the treatment goals. So for example, in documentation, you would include them in the same way that you would include an intervention or sharing what the therapist did. And they would be considered under that part. So yeah, so they can help with a variety of things. I know sometimes when working with kids with ADHD, for example, if they're able to focus through the session and whatnot, then at the end they get to teach the dog a trick. That's one thing you can do. Yeah. There's really a lot of different things in play therapy. Oftentimes just seeing how the child and the animal interact. A lot of times you can have the client talk to the animal and they'll tell them things that they're not comfortable telling you. So you can be like, well, what do you think Sunny would think of that? Or can you tell Sunny how you're feeling about that? And they're able to open up in ways that they sometimes aren't able to with a human, because the animal is just a more, it's easier to be vulnerable with the animal. An animal has never betrayed them. So it's different than a person.
And they just look at you with that face and those eyes, and you're like, oh, I love you. And then it does make it a lot easier. It's I just keep thinking about like all those times with my dog where I'm like, oh, I didn't really necessarily want it to talk to anybody else, but then I will go and hug my dog for as long as he will let me, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, that feels a little bit better. And so there's something slightly different, more just easier, more comfortable, and therapy in itself can be kind of scary. It can be difficult, and having an extra added support aside from the therapist, I think it's really awesome. I know you have a lot of really awesome projects that you're working on, so I wanted you to see if you'll be willing to share some of those with us, and then share like where people can find you, because I know you wrote the blogs and they have a lot more information that we share here today. This was just a little taste, and if you're really interested in learning a lot more, you can check out your website right there, all there. There's a really neat graphic. I brag about it all the time. I did not make it. You did, but it's really awesome. I love it because like, I'm a visual person, so like it really clearly tells you like the difference between an emotional support animal, a service animal, and like a therapy dog. And so that's like really awesome. There's also book recommendations, which I absolutely loved. There's tons of other things. So I highly recommend you check out the blogs, and you can tell us about the other projects you're working on as well.
Yeah, so the blogs you mentioned are all on my website, which is sherrirohde.com, and I don't expect you to know how to spell that, so it's SHERRIEROHDE.com. And you can also go to therapydogtalk.com if that's easier. It will just redirect you to that section. But I, on Sunny's account, which is Sunny's Best Life on Instagram, I host weekly interviews with therapy dog teams, a variety. Some are doing animal assisted therapy, some are doing animal assisted activities, and there's so many different types of handlers, so many different types of work they do, so many different breeds of dogs represented there. And on my website, you can sort those by organization or breed, or whatever it is you're looking for, to kind of get a better understanding of what types of dogs are doing that work. And I also export that to a podcast called Therapy Dog Talk. So you can find that again on my website or on Spotify, Google, Apple, whichever is your preference. And those all go there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I have the guide on my website as well, freeguide.therapydogtalk.com. That's a guide to how to get started with therapy dogs. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to publish more information there. Thank you, huge thank you to you for motivating me to write those 4 articles, because I'm getting ready to graduate from my program, my master's program, next month. And so my schedule is chaotic, but there's a lot more topics that I'd like to write about and share there.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And like I was just about to say, like they can also follow you on social media to sort of like keep up to date and check out your website every now and then. Because I know you'll be posting a lot of that. And I am kind of invested in Sunny's therapy dog training now. So I'll be checking in on you. And I think it will be really awesome if once Sunny has some experience being in the therapy room, then maybe we can do another video and talk about how that's going. I'll be very interested in knowing. And a lot of these videos and the content that I create is because I want to geek out and because I want to know more. So I figured there's other people that might also be interested in it. And yeah. So
yeah,
I'm
totally open to that.
Great. So I'll put a link to your website and your social media and stuff like that on the description for this video. And yeah. So we'll see you in a couple of months when Sunny finishes her training and she starts working.
Sounds good. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out on the website or on our social media accounts. Always happy to answer any questions.
So I hope you guys found that really helpful, and the information we talked about was something you were interested in. If you are, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to also hit the bell so you know when I publish more videos. I usually talk about mental health and geek culture, so there's tons of new videos that I have planned, and I hope you guys also find those helpful. And so in the meantime, you can always look into my website, psychologyforgeeks.com, or you can check out my social media at Superpower Toolkit. That's Super PWR Toolkit. And I have a lot of resources and information and super cool things. And I highly recommend you guys check out my new series, Reframe and Re-Enchant.